Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 2 of Spy Family Season 2. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So it seems like we're getting a neat little adaptation of one of my favorite chapters. So it seems like, Bond is going to be the focus. We had a nice big arc with him before where he was sort of introduced, but since then, he's just kind of been a side character. And given that he has precognitive powers, that's an interesting thing. You can do a lot with that. And I do like how they sort of change the art style. They make it more, what would you call it, like sketchy, as if it were drawn in with crayons and stuff. So, he knows what's going to happen, but I think the interesting thing is that, he's a dog, and however intelligent he might be, there's only so much he knows, Like, a person's always going to be smarter than a dog, regardless of whether or not they can see the future. And that is something. We don't really know what exactly the limits of his powers are. Is he aware of his own death? I mean, it seems like this might be the case to some degree. But you do have to wonder, is a dog truly aware of what that means? In this sense, I think we can assume Bond does understand, seeing as how, he understands that people will be sad for him should he die. But at the same time, he's trying to think, if death is imminent, he has to do something. Unfortunately, schoolwork is a little bit more important at the moment. So this is the crux of the episode. He's going to be eating Yor's cooking, and as we know, to put it mildly, she is no Michelin star chef. In fact, her cooking could best be described as industrial waste. So, this is it. This is how Bond, in all likelihood, dies. So, this is now a matter of survival for him. It's bad enough that, we don't have any dog food, but if food will kill him, that's all the more incentive not to eat. And I feel like this is where Anya's exaggerations might cause a bit of an issue. Anya knows Yor's an assassin, but she probably doesn't fully grasp what that means, nor has she accurately transmitted that meaning over to Bond. It's ridiculous in a funny way that Yor would actually kill the family dog for not cooking, or for not eating, rather. That's just really absurd. So it's a nice bit of mental calculus that Bond has done. Basically, if he can somehow get Lloyd to come home early and not have to work late, then he can avoid death. And that's a pretty strong incentive, but then this leads to the issue of, from Yor's perspective, this is their dog running away and going missing. From Yor's perspective, this is something of a crisis. The family dog is gone on her watch. Obviously, this means divorce and then imprisonment for being an assassin. No good, obviously. Although, fortunately, Bond is generally just kind of smart enough to probably not get into too much trouble. Oh, man. If you get hot dogs from a street vendor, obviously that is worthy of death. It's just sort of common sense. But one of the things I really like about Spy Family is that it really just seems to sort of get this inherent logic that kids and animals operate by. You know, there is logic there, but it's not working with all the facts, and sort of draws conclusions and inferences that maybe don't comport with reality. It is kind of notable that Bond basically went to find Lloyd and then kind of gave up on that almost immediately. You know, he might be smart for a dog, but he is, after all, a dog. So I'm wondering what exactly is going through his head right now. You know, is he just sort of contemplating his new life? Surely that, you know, that can't be the case. He has to go home eventually, right? So this is interesting. Twilight is after a sort of experimental truth serum, and he hasn't been able to do the sort of groundwork that would allow him to infiltrate in disguise. So normally, you know, he just has to do this stealthily, but now with the added wrinkle of Bond. So, you know, this raises a whole bunch of questions. You know, what on earth is the family dog doing here? Why is he so hell-bent on interfering in this mission? So it's interesting that Twilight's almost sort of confiding in him. You know, he's saying, you know, this is like the enemy's base. That's not something you should normally let slip. And this is one of the things I like, where it's almost like a farce, people operating on misunderstanding. You know, Twilight knows Bond was experimented on, and so he's naturally just sort of assuming that these guys are related to that, and now Bond wants revenge. You know, that's not bad. Not a bad deduction, and not a bad lie to go with. Of course, you know, it's not true. Bond is more interested in food. So I guess the question is, you know, what's the big wrinkle here? Surely bringing a big white dog in on a stealth mission, that's, you know, it's not exactly a good idea. Although I guess given the circumstances, it probably would have been worse to leave him sitting alone. And, you know, unbeknownst to Twilight, Bond is actually useful, you know. He does have these precognitive powers, and that combined with his unwillingness to eat yours cooking, that means he really just sort of has to work together with Twilight to prevent things from going south. Because, you know, Twilight, he's just operating under his understanding that all the employees have clocked out, but Bond knows for a fact that they're still here. And, you know, I gotta feel for these guys a little bit, being called back in the middle of the night. Like, that's pretty rough. Ah, Twilight, dude. You're getting soft, dude. You left the door unlocked? Now that's an interesting little note, making it look like a bandit stole stuff. Alright. You know, it seems to me that this is maybe the wrong approach, but I guess seeing as how these people are already here, you know, what can you do? Wow. You know, Bond knows what's up. I'd imagine it takes a good deal of dexterity for a dog to do something like that, rather than, you know, just to bite the guy. Man, you know, this is a good outcome. The future has changed for the better. You get some nice, delicious food. He doesn't die. You know, a big success. Maybe a little bit less than that time they stopped the bomb plot, but, you know, this is a close second. And you know what? Nobody's really the wiser as to what was actually going on. That's the kicker. So now we have the other story, and this is, this one just follows around Damien and his friends and classmates. And I guess it's good to see him. You know, we haven't seen them this season so far. And, you know, this story does involve them being sort of isolated. At least from the other characters. Yeah, you know, this is rather odd for Damien to be, I guess, any less than excellent in his behavior and all that. So we already sort of know at this point that his relationship with his family isn't all that great. He sort of views it through the lens of academic excellence being the only way to achieve any sort of approval. You know, unfortunately, that's kind of rough on a kid, especially a kid his age. You know, like, I've always been fairly studious in my life, but at his age, I definitely would have been resentful of doing all the studying that he does. And I guess what's worse is that Damien's sort of, being punished. You know, he has to take care of chores and do stuff like that, while also shouldering the burden of his family. And I guess the worst part is that, you know, Damien's friends can't even help him out. Not that they were helping initially. You know, they're pretty good guys, ultimately. They're trying to get in trouble. And I suspect Henderson understands that. You know. They're doing this for an honorable reason. Yeah, you know, I really do think Henderson was just sort of humoring them. Because, you know, they wouldn't have done this had Damien not been singled out. You know, it's kind of sad in both ways. You know, Damien, he just wants them to go off and have fun and do their own stuff. But, you know, what's the point of doing all sorts of fun stuff if you're not doing it with your friends, you know? So I'm wondering, what's the goal here? Is this just like a childish flight of fancy, or are they, trying to get in more trouble deliberately? You know, Henderson really is a good guy. He understands that, you know, they're not bad kids and that they're really only causing trouble to hang out with Damien. Alright, so I think Henderson is playing some three-dimensional chess here. The new punishment is hanging out with Mr. Green here, and he definitely doesn't strike me as the teacher type. You know, I think this is Henderson being a little bit cheeky again, sort of rewarding them a little bit. This doesn't seem like much of a reward right away, but, you know, I do think there's something to be said for spending time in nature. I mean, I guess in its own way, canoeing like this would be rather thrilling. You know, it might be beyond the scope of a school field trip or something like that, but, you know, presumably with a teacher around, things aren't going to be all that bad. So even when things are seemingly life and death, Damien's friends are willing to sacrifice themselves for him. It turns out none of that's necessary, but, I don't know, there's something about that where when you think it's life and death, that shows, I guess, a degree of sincerity in how you act. It shows your true character, I suppose. And in that regard, Damien really does have good friends. From the outset, it doesn't seem like he would really deserve to have such good, honorable friends. Considering how he's generally just kind of a jerk. But at the same time, he does have his reasons for being a jerk, not if they necessarily excuse it. Alright, so Mr. Green is pounding some survival skills into them. Yeah, we didn't bring any food. If you guys want to eat, we're gonna have to catch something. Meaning, either fish or small game. And if you're not necessarily catching something, then you'll have to forage. And I definitely relate. I'm not all that big on putting worms on fish hooks or fishing in general. So you know what? It's not much, it's merely one fish, but if nothing else, I'd say it's a significant achievement to have caught something and then to sort of, eat what you caught. It's one of those things where it might not actually taste all that good or anything, but, it's the work that went into it that makes it good. And I think once again, Damien's being a little hard on himself. He thinks he could be studying, but it's unfortunate that his mindset doesn't really allow for there being time in the future. There will be plenty of time, especially for him, I'd imagine. But, there's only so much time you can spend getting experiences like this. So here we go, Mr. Green, he's not merely a survivalist, he's dropping some heavy knowledge. You have to relax from time to time, otherwise you burn out. Obviously he couches it in more intellectual terms than that, but, it makes sense, you have to let your brain rest. It is kind of unfortunate that Damien doesn't really know quite how to space out. I don't know what to make of that. It's something like he's been so focused on work that he doesn't really know how. That's kind of a sad thing. Oh dear. So that's something, Mr. Green's just teasing them a little bit, like, hey, did you know that picnic, this word I'm saying over and over, is code for defecting? Careful, man, that's dangerous talk. Ooh, Mr. Green has just tanked his credibility. He said being a politician is a noble goal. Yeah, that's not quite true. Damien might have noble ambitions of making the world a better place, but, I really don't think being a politician is the way to do it. I guess if nothing else, he is giving some rational advice. Yes, you have all these dreams, but you have to think about how to make them possible. Wanting it to happen is not enough in and of itself, And that is fair. You do have to temper idealism with realism, All one or all the other isn't going to cut it. That is a really beautiful scene, sort of seeing all these stars and all that reflecting off the water. Seeing the stars, too, is a rather magnificent thing, outside of city lights and all that. It really is incredible how many there are and how brightly they shine, too. I guess the upshot here is that Damien might finally understand spacing out. Looking around, marveling at the cosmos and all that. Yeah, you know what? I think Mr. Henderson made the right choice by punishing them in this manner. Because when you get down to it, I think the idea of punishment is to learn a lesson. And, I think it's safe to say Damien's learned his lesson here. Overworking is really no good, Hard work is important, you should work hard, but not to your own detriment. Now, that might be a rather poor essay, but I think it's a rather accurate summation. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.